Hi, welcome to a podcast. We're already laughing. This is great. This is a podcast. My name's Hank Meldrum. I am a artist and filmmaker and many things. And my goal. Oh, you didn't turn your phone off. We've already ruined it. Yeah, let's turn our phones off. How about that for a start? Professionalism for the win.
You said casual.
Yeah, it's very casual. Already, great. So I'm joined here with Jordyn Kapustka, who we've met through school and through art projects, short films. Do you wanna just introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jordyn Kapustka. I'm kind of an eclectic kind of person. Like, I do a lot of theater, a lot of art, some work on some films, mostly Hank's films. But I'm mostly a historian. But I go see movies with Hank a lot, so that's kind of why I'm here.
Yeah, so the podcast, I would like to do it regularly with a wide variety of people who will talk to me, hopefully. But yeah, and it will focus on a range of art, probably a lot of film, just because that's what I'm most involved in. And movie reviews and stuff like that. Can you move your mic a little bit closer to you? Perfect. Okay. We saw Joker together. I thought that would be a good first podcast topic to start with. Maybe I should move away from my mic. I don't know. We'll see how this turns out. We saw Joker. We've each had like about a day for it to sink in.
Mm-hmm.
I tried not to read any reviews afterwards or obviously this movie has had a lot of buzz and controversy surrounding it. I've tried to steer clear from it as much as possible, just so I had an uncolored take on it. I don't know, what do you read any reviews or look at anything before you saw it?
Before I saw it, I didn't really read anything about it. I just knew it was the Joker movie, and it was an origin story, and I wanted to go see it. Afterwards, I've only read one article afterwards.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know, do you want to do a non-spoiler section and then do spoilers?
Sure.
Okay.
If we can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in without spoiling anything, what's the what were your impressions?
I really liked it. I thought it was a really well done film. I thought it brought a lot to the surface about like mental health, and especially about like the mental health system,
Right.
and the criminal justice system. And I thought it did it in a way that not a lot of movies are brave enough to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and this version of the Joker, I think more than any other we've seen, focused on the mental health side of it. As like, this is a character whose story is informed by their mental health.
Yes.
Or lack thereof. I don't know, how do you think it compared to other portrayals of the Joker?
I thought it was much more of a real Joker. It was like more of a real person that became the Joker, whereas other ones, I feel like we kind of separate humanity and the Joker just becomes this crazy evil villain who doesn't have any sort of like touch with reality whatsoever. Whereas this was definitely a very real human being who became the Joker.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if, again, I haven't read a lot of the controversy, I know that it's been getting very mixed reviews. I think I don't know. I don't even know. I guess I can pull up Rotten Tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, do you think that this version of the character will be I don't know if I want to say beloved, but like iconic in the way that Heath Ledger's was?
I think definitely. I don't know if it'll be as loved as Heath Ledger's was, because Heath Ledger's is very much just like an idol at this point.
Right.
And like his portrayal of the Joker is just like the pinnacle.
Right.
Right.
Most people would consider it. Most people do consider that.
Right.
At least live action.
And I think a lot of that is actually centered around the tragedy that befell Heath Ledger afterwards. And so like a lot of that sticks in our mind of like he gave his life for this role. But I think Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of the Joker was definitely, it was very different. And I think it was brave, and like you can't really compare it to other Jokers just because it was so different and so real. And I think that a lot of people will definitely like his version of the Joker.
Yeah. So I just pulled up Rotten Tomatoes. This is interesting. The critical score, like the tomato meters, is 69. So it's still a majority, but it's not as high as you might think, since it's like actually getting Oscar buzz and stuff. The audience score, however, is 91%, which is very positive. I don't know this obviously. I think it's fact check something, but I think it's produced by Scorsese, and it's definitely a Scorsese type. Have you seen any Scorsese?
Not that I know off the top of my head.
So well, like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, which I watched recently to prepare for this, are very much. They're not in this style, but Joker is very much in the style of those movies, and they're obviously like great acclaimed movies. So I'm curious what the why critics aren't connecting with it as much as you might think. I don't know. We can talk more. I can read some of the review taglines, I guess, but I would probably save that for spoilers. I don't know. So, I don't know. I wasn't sure how comic booky this movie was going to be. Obviously, it's R-rated, and I guess like outside of Logan and Deadpool, but that's totally a different genre, really. But I don't know. What were you? Without spoiling it, what were you expecting the comic booky level to be, and then did that?
From what I had heard and from the trailers that I had seen, I didn't expect it to be very comic booky. I expected it to be very grounded and very like real. Because the way it was described to me before I went to go see it, it was described as like a case study almost.
Right.
Yeah, like a psychological case study.
Yeah. I think I was. I don't know what we want. I'll just say that before we go into spoilers, I really enjoyed it. Most of it, especially like the first two acts, didn't really surprise me, but I thought that where it ended up was very cool. I think it was a very cool third act. And it was similar to the movies that I mentioned, but it was also different enough that it was still very effective. Yeah. Also, maybe we should say that before we go into too much detail, that we will be discussing a lot of triggering discussions. If you haven't seen the movie and if you want to see it, go see it. Don't listen to this. But yeah, if you are sensitive to mental health issues, gun violence, what else? Suicide. Yeah, just be careful. Okay, yeah.
Clowns.
What?
Clowns.
Clowns. If you're
you're triggered by
sensitive to clowns.
Yeah.
Why are you even listening to this? Okay, so spoilers. There's no Batman.
there's kind of Batman.
Well, yeah, okay.
There's Bruce Wayne.
So
as a
yeah,
kid.
what I was getting at was I wasn't sure how comic booky it was going to be. Like I wasn't even sure if they were going to call it Gotham. But yes, they called it Gotham. It does have Thomas Wayne, as we know. It does have young Bruce Wayne, and we see at the end the actual like Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a very brief little shot at like near the very end of Bruce Wayne in the alley. So it's definitely it's definitely a story that acknowledges Batman. And I don't know, do you think that they're going to use this as a launching off point for like the new Batman run?
I don't know. I'd be interested to see how they would do that, especially since we do know that we do have a new Batman now. So it would be very interesting for them to combine those two, especially with the information that we gain about the Joker and Batman's relationship through this movie.
Right. Yeah, so let's talk about that. So, I don't know. In the movie, we are introduced to the idea that the Joker, whose real name in this is Arthur, is actually the son of Thomas Wayne, and that he was the son of an affair that Thomas Wayne had with one of their maids. But then it goes on to show that this is actually just a lie that was told to him by his mother,
mm-hmm.
who was also suffering from mental illness. But I don't know. Do you think that was it ambiguous?
I thought it was a little ambiguous. They kind of left it up for interpretation as to what really was the truth, you know? Was she painted as someone with mental illness?
Right, because on paperwork,
it
was just something that she made up.
Right, but...
And she does have a mental illness, but that's mm-hmm. not necessarily...
But she did even maintain, even when they confronted her with the paperwork, that Thomas Wayne had made it all up.
Had forged it, right.
Yeah, in order to make her look crazy. For appearance's sake.
Right. Which is totally something that happens.
Yeah.
So.
It definitely is. So it's definitely something that I feel like they very much left it up to interpretation.
Yeah.
And I mean, even Arthur himself, was like, you have to be my father. You look like me, Yeah,
I thought that was interesting. Yeah. He was like, look at us. And they do sort of look alike.
They do. I mean, they had the same nose and everything. It was crazy.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so I think it's been said that this is in a different universe from anything else mm-hmm. in DC, but I think, things change, obviously, all the time. So I think it would be really interesting, even if they just did like a, cut to 20 years later.
Right.
And it's set, whatever, in 2000 or
mm-hmm.
2010s. And they kept this version of the character in the continuity. I think it would be really cool.
Yeah.
Because I was saying, I can't imagine what version of the Joker they would... I can't imagine something being better than what they established here.
Right.
Whatever version of the Joker they go with.
Yeah, I agree. And it was a very, very fully fleshed out Joker. I don't feel like we've gotten a fully fleshed out Joker before.
And fleshed out as in a good character, but also we know a lot about his origin, mm-hmm. which is very different from Heath Ledger, of course. But I don't think that takes away from the character's pathos and also how scary he is. Because he is very threatening.
I mean, honestly, I find him more threatening than the other Jokers.
Right.
Simply because of how real he is and how, it really is, the whole time I was watching the movie, I was just thinking of that one line, the difference between you and me is just one bad day.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as far as the portrayal of mental health goes, so the character, it's suggested that he was abused as a child, was beaten, suffered, head trauma that may have caused some of his condition in mm-hmm. adult life. And he well, his main condition is that he has a neurological condition where he starts laughing at random times that don't line up with his emotions. He carries a card around that he hands to people that like explains that when things go wrong. I don't know. What do you think of that portrayal?
I thought it was really interesting. I thought it added a lot to the character. And I think it provided like a really good base for them to build off of with his descent into madness. Because like a normal person could have had that neurological condition and probably been okay. Like he probably would have been okay if it wasn't for all the people's reactions to who he was and like his neurological condition.
Yeah, I think it was cool that they went with that specifically, which isn't, I don't think that specifically has been used for that character before, at least not in the more mainstream portrayals. But I think it was cool because it was giving him something that it wasn't intentional. It's not like he was just laughing because he's crazy, and it's something that he can't hide, he can't control, and so it's bringing out, it's highlighting how people treat people who have some condition or something about them that they can't control. And obviously, like, the inciting incident of the film is catalyzed by that, by people being cruel to him because he's freakish to them, and that's how he ends up killing the first people who he kills, almost by accident, just out of fear, like
purely out of self-defense.
Yeah, and out of he was being completely victimized. Yeah, so that was so. Walk me through your reactions to all of the turns throughout.
All of the turns.
This movie. So obviously, around the second act, break into the second act, he kills people for the first time.
Right.
And there starts to be a different tone to the movie. I think he kind of changes the way that he behaves and thinks.
Yeah. So there's that first incident where and I think it actually happens earlier. I think the inciting incident actually happens a lot earlier where
what do you think it was?
I think it was actually when he's told like that he can no longer go to therapy anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, I think it's and this is where like the social commentary on like the mental health system is, where like he's sitting there and he's telling this therapist that he's talking to, he wants to kill himself and he's depressed and he's really screaming for help and he's asking for more medication, he's asking for more, and they basically just tell him, sorry, our budget's getting cut, so not only are we unable to give you more, we're actually going to give you less and you can't come to these meetings anymore, so like you're done.
Yeah. And
they don't refer him to anyone, he asks
yeah, like, where do I go next,
where can I go? Yeah. And they just say, sorry, you're done.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
And they just kind of leave him in the wind. And I think that's definitely the inciting incident, because like that's where he stops being able to get the medication, which, while it wasn't enough to help him, it was enough to keep him sort of grounded in reality. So I think that's really the inciting incident. And like, I mean, when I watched that, my heart just broke. Because I know so many people who like have fallen through the cracks like that.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a problem that's very prevalent in modern society. And then there's the second incident where he is being victimized. Yeah. These three like super rich kids come over and start teasing him at first. And then it goes into they full on just beat him up.
Yeah.
And
not for the first time in the movie.
No, he get the very first
second time that we've seen people just
beat on him.
Just beat him for no reason.
Yeah, like the first time happens at the beginning of the movie. It's the very, very like beginning, where these teenagers just beat him up for no reason other than that he's this vulnerable clown.
Yeah.
And in the first incident, he doesn't stand up for himself, and he just lets himself get lets himself get jumped. And he ends up getting a lot of fallout from his lack of action. And he still gets blamed for everything that happened. He gets blamed for losing this sign that he had, and he gets blamed for not going back to work because he was bleeding in the streets.
Yeah.
And so the first instant when he kills people is definitely like a direct mirror, where these rich kids start to just beat on him, and he's literally bleeding in the subway, and this time he actually has a gun with him.
And he got the gun because someone gave him the gun, but it was actually, we find out later that they were giving him the gun to sort of like set him up and get him fired.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it played off as, yeah.
And so even like his gateway into being violent back was also a form of abuse that was given
someone
to
setting him up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so we see him get beat up, and he actually has a gun with him, and this time he reacts, and he shoots all these guys who were beating him up. And they're very clearly bad guys. Just before they start beating this guy up, they are harassing a young woman on the subway, who's just asking them to stop. And the only reason I think they even let her go is because their attention was directed to the Joker, or to Arthur, as he is known at the time. It definitely shocked me a little bit when he first fired the gun, because I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
But it made sense, you know? But what was really terrible, is obviously he had mental health illness, and he knew that shooting these people was not a good thing to do. And so he didn't tell anyone. And basically the cops go looking for him, but because these guys are rich, they get made into the victims of this whole situation.
Right.
And the clown who killed them is this evil criminal. But all of the poor make him out to be a hero.
Right. So it actually becomes a symbol for a political and social movement, which is also different than other portrayals of the Joker, because his clown gangs in the Burton movie and whatever, they're criminals, actual organized crime criminals. Yeah. But they're just protesters. And most of them aren't even doing anything wrong. They're just protesting outside whatever Thomas Wayne's house, and Thomas Wayne running for mayor, who's sort of the rich, out of touch kind of stereotype. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on. What happens next? So yeah, all the stuff with finding out that his mother may or may not have been employed by, she was employed, but may or may not have had an affair with Thomas Wayne. And then he gets invited on. So Robert De Niro is also in this movie. It's funny that that's an afterthought, because there's so much else going on. There's such a powerhouse performance from Joaquin Phoenix at the forefront. But yes, Robert De Niro, in a direct parallel to The King of Comedy, in which Jerry Lewis is the host of a comedy show, and Robert De Niro is the mentally unstable younger comedian who's trying to get on the show. Oh yeah, also spoilers for Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. If you haven't seen those, check them out. Might not want to listen to this until you have. But he gets invited on this show because he's trying to be a stand-up comedian, and some of his stand-up, which is very cringy, because I don't know, how would you describe it?
He's definitely not, he doesn't have a very good stage presence.
Right.
Right. And a lot of his jokes, he's not naturally funny is the problem, right? He's not a very naturally funny person, but he loves comedy.
Yeah.
And he really wants to be a funny person. And so, I mean, you'll see him throughout the movie. He goes to comedy clubs and goes to comedy acts, and he takes notes on what is funny and what's not funny. And he kind of creates more like formulated jokes rather than just like naturally funny jokes that like a creative comedian would come up with. He more comes up with like a formula for what is funny, and then he makes a joke that fits that formula. And so it's definitely very rigid. And then he's also a very nervous person, so he's like laughing in between because sometimes when he gets nervous, his like neurological condition acts up, and so it's the delivery is very cringy. It's very hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's almost like a train wreck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting how, like at all the shows that he goes to, not like on TV, but like the underground ones, there's a lot of like the comedians are making very raunchy jokes, and it's all very sex themed, and so like we see him writing down like sexy is always funny. And like he doesn't quite get it, but it's sort of like the idea of pushing boundaries, and then like at the end we obviously see that like he's turned that around, and like he brings up the like obviously there's the good and evil, but also he's like, who gets to decide what's funny and not funny? Like, why is that funny but it's not funny when, you know, there's violence? Yeah. So can we talk about the scene where he kills the guy from the clown shop or whatever it's?
Oh yeah.
I thought that was very well done.
I thought it was really well done.
I was actually like afraid in that scene. Like I didn't know what was going to happen.
I was a little terrified.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. Well, okay, the whole time, the second they showed up, right, and he grabbed the scissors.
Yeah, he grabs the scissors. As soon as he grabbed the scissors.
I knew something.
It was masterfully tense.
Yes.
I thought.
I knew something was going to happen. I wasn't sure what, but I knew
it's the kind of thing where you're not sure. Like, it might just be a fake out where, like, they'll just leave.
Right.
But no, like, he kills him, and it's more brutal than anything we'd seen in the movie so far, so there's nothing preparing you for that.
I think it was the most brutal part of the whole movie.
Yeah, for sure.
So the guy that he kills is the guy who gave him the gun and like set him up to get fired.
Yeah.
And then because he had this gun, that's the reason he was able to do his first murders. So this guy, like, there's a lot of anger towards him. But no matter what, even though this guy like has like basically stabbed Arthur in the back 1,000,000 times, this guy still pretends that they're like best friends and they're like buddy. Like he's done no wrong. And it's very strange. This guy basically has like no sympathy or guilt, like no conscience almost. And so yeah.
And did he come over because he knew about the show that he was going to be on?
No. So the reason he came over was because, so his fake reason, like his excuse for coming over was that he found out that Arthur's mom was in the hospital.
Right.
And so he came
and before that, we should also talk about the scene where he kills his mother.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was...
Oh, definitely.
That shocked me. I did not think that was going to happen.
I also didn't see it coming. Yeah.
So the line from the trailer that you may have heard, where he says, "I used to think that my life is a tragedy, but now I know it's a comedy," that is in the movie set to him suffocating his mother in the hospital, which is very upsetting.
Yeah. So throughout most of the movie, about half of the movie, throughout about half the movie, he's definitely a mama's boy, right. And like he's a very loving, doting son. He's always taking care.
Yeah, he's the man of the house. He takes care of her.
He's always taking care of his mother. He feeds her. He bathes her. He puts her to bed. He watches TV with her. He dances with her. And like anytime someone criticizes his mother, that's a bad thing. Right. Don't do it. It's like the one thing that can like really get him angry.
And people are like telling him that she's crazy because she made up supposedly this whole story of him being the son of Thomas Wayne instead of being adopted like the paperwork shows.
Yeah.
And he just won't accept it. And he eventually does when he actually sees the paperwork, and that's, believes at least presumably that that he is adopted. She lied to him.
Yeah. And that but I don't think that's really what drove him over the edge to kill her. I think what drove him over the edge was when he found out why his mother was institutionalized in the first place. So his mother was institutionalized because she had an abusive boyfriend who abused her, but also abused Arthur.
Right.
And basically when they found Arthur, he was chained to a radiator. And he had like head trauma, and that's probably the head trauma that caused his neurological condition.
Yeah.
And I think he felt so betrayed, that he had always taken such good care of his mother and he'd always cared about her so much. But that she couldn't do the same for him when he was in a vulnerable place. I think that's what drove him over to the edge to kill her. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was hard to watch. So back to the scene where he kills, he kills his, the guy from the circus, or the clown, what is that? Where does he work? It's a clown rental service?
It's like a clown performer service. Yeah. You
get to hire a clown.
Yeah.
And there'll be a clown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the guy comes over with the other guy who's a little person, who was like the only person that was nice to Arthur while he worked there. And I don't know, did you think that he was going to die too?
I did.
I wasn't sure. It could have gone either way.
I definitely thought that it was, and there was a lot of like fake outs where it was like, is he gonna die? Is he not gonna die?
Yeah.
And like Arthur does this horribly brutal massacre of this man.
Yeah.
And this other guy is just like cowering in the corner, obviously terrified.
Yeah.
And speechless, and he has no idea what to do. And Arthur is just like, don't worry, like, I'm not gonna hurt you. You were the only person who was ever nice to me, so why on earth would I hurt you? And so you think like, oh, he's gonna live, like, oh, okay. And Arthur's just like, go on, like, go ahead, you can leave. It's fine. Don't look. I don't want you to see this, like, awfulness that just happened. So don't look at the body. Just go, right? And so this poor guy goes over to the door, all scared, just wants to get out of there. But because he has dwarfism, he can't reach the lock up high. And it's just this horribly tense moment where, like, you think that this poor guy is gonna get killed because you think that Arthur has locked this on purpose in order to like make sure that he can't get out. And like, it was so weird to watch and like suspenseful. And this guy, he just turns around and he just goes, Arthur, can you unlock the door for me? And Arthur like gets up and he's like, yeah, sure, buddy, like no problem. And it's just this very strange moment where you're not quite sure what Arthur's going to do. And he ends up unlocking the door and letting him go. And so it's
very tense.
It's very tense, very suspenseful, very well done.
Yeah.
Very well done.
I like that scene a lot.
One of my favorite scenes. But I think it says a lot to the character of Arthur / the Joker. that he wasn't looking to hurt those who were kind. He wasn't looking to hurt people who looked out for other people or people who were also victims or anything like that. Hank, I thought you said phone's turned off.
My phone is silenced. I'm checking the information.
But so it's but yeah, he very clearly only wants to hurt the people who have spent their lives hurting other people.
Right. I think that they used when something bad happened and when they held back well, so that you couldn't quite tell what was going. So at the end, when he's on the show, I don't know what. How did you think that was going to play out?
I did not know.
So in King of Comedy, what they do? Should I spoil it for you?
I don't care.
Okay, so they end up kidnapping the Jerry Lewis character, this guy and another one of his crazy fans. They kidnap him, and they force him to let him on the show so that he can perform his act. And so at the end, it's basically he performs his act, and that's it. And then he becomes famous, even though he's a criminal. So he goes to jail for a little bit, but then he got famous off of it. So this plays out differently. I wasn't sure if it was going to be he just comes on and makes a point and then goes off.
When he first got the phone call,
yeah,
where they were asking him hey, can you come on the show?
Yeah.
My heart broke a little bit because I was it was very clear that the only reason that they wanted him on the show wasn't because he was funny or anything like that. It was solely because they wanted to make fun of him.
Right.
And so it was another traumatic. It was just this one more sad, tragic thing to have happened to this poor guy. It's an interesting way to describe the Joker. This poor guy. You feel so bad for him.
Yeah.
'Cause it's just one thing after another.
Yeah.
He's just made into a victim time and time again. But yeah, so he goes on this show, and I'm not sure what I expected to happen. I didn't expect what happened to happen.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk, because this is, I thought it was really effective, but then, 5 seconds later, I was like, wait a minute. And, part of this, it's set in, probably the early 80s?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe late 80s, something like that.
But I still don't think, he would not have been able to bring a gun on stage, right?
I think maybe.
Surely.
Yeah. I don't think they would have checked him too
in
hard.
In the 80s? Do you think really?
I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, obviously now things like that have very high security.
Okay, you gotta keep in mind, this is a little disconnected from reality. It is Gotham.
Sure,
it's not an actual city.
Anyways, he has the gun, and at a certain point, he just pulls it out and shoots Robert De Niro in the head.
Yeah.
And that's...
Yeah.
On live TV. On this family program.
After he confesses
after he confesses to
his
being
first murder.
the original
clown killer,
yeah, who killed the 3 people on the subway, and started this entire movement, and before they let him on, because obviously there's been all these protests, and he comes on in full Joker costume and makeup, and so I think that was strange. That, I mean, obviously, if there was a parallel to that today, obviously I don't think that would happen, but they were kind of concerned that it was a political thing, and he was just like, oh no, it's not political.
Yeah, this isn't a political thing. This is just who I am,
and
I
in
think
a way
it'll
it
be
isn't,
a part of my act.
Because he's not involved in the protests at all. This is completely a conflict within him, that he's acting out,
and it just so happens to incite a political movement
that connects with so many people.
Right.
Yeah. So, and the film ends with him being arrested and taken away amidst protests everywhere deep in the city. What do you think of how it ended? I felt like there were many points where it could have ended, and then it just kept going a little bit longer.
So that's the thing, right? I wanted it to go a little bit longer because I wanted to see... Yeah, because I wanted to see how he cut himself.
You mean, like, cut the scars?
Mm-hmm. That was, like, my one thing that I wanted it to end with.
Do you think that's going to be part of his...
I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe he's not going to be a Joker that has the scars.
Right. Because that was sort of Heath Ledger's thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are other Jokers who have had the scars. Through sure. They all have different ways of getting those scars. But that was something that I was, like, interested to see is, like, how they would do that.
And I mean, some of them...
Which I think they did with, like, him, using his blood in order to make a smile on his face.
Right.
They definitely did do that. So I thought that was a pretty good way to end it. But I definitely... Or I thought they were going to introduce Harley Quinn almost.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit, because, like, he ends up in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, I guess they could have made the woman...
yeah, he ends up in Arkham Asylum, and he...
Counseling him. They could have made her Harley Quinn.
Yeah, he has the therapist, and he's counseling... Or she's counseling him, and...
He's counseling her.
He's counseling her.
He's schooling her.
And then, like, it just, like... It cuts, and it's made to suggest that he kills her because when he's leaving down the hallway, completely unguarded, he has bloody footprints. So it's very, very clear that he kills his therapist at the end of that session, and then all the guards chase after him.
See, I wanted it to end because he the car that he's being the police car that he's going out in is hit by a truck, and then, like, all the people who are protesting pull him out and, like, raise him up like their icon, and he gets, like, on top of the hood. I almost wanted to just end there.
Yeah, that was a good... I thought it was going to end there, especially with the smile. Once he wakes up and he does, like, the smile thing, I thought that was like, oh, that's it. Yeah, that's how this ends. But it did feel like it had, like, 3 or 4 endings.
Yeah.
And that just kept going.
We didn't stay for the post-credits. I was told...
There was a post-credits scene?
No, I don't know. I was told by you that there wasn't, but I haven't checked.
Because I don't think there was.
Let me check. I'm going to check right now.
Usually when the lights come back on, that means there's no post-credits scene.
Joker post... Not necessarily. Let's see. Does Joker have a post-credits scene?
I'm going to be so mad if there is a post-credits scene.
We have to watch it right now. So the only reason to stick around is to listen to this strange... Okay.
So there isn't.
But there's no mid-credits or post-credits during each point. Okay, good.
Woohoo!
We didn't miss anything.
Thank goodness.
All right, what else? Oh, let's talk about the Zazie Beetz character.
The who character?
The woman. The
yes.
quote-unquote love interest.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So this is also a direct I guess homage to King of Comedy. In which there's sequences, like actual cinematic sequences, where he's acting out his imagination of, like, being best friends with the Jerry Lewis character.
Something that I do often.
Yeah, and it's so relatable. And it's so
relatable.
Like, watching that movie is tragic because you're like, oh my gosh, I can totally do this in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of different. It's not with the Robert De Niro character. It's this woman who lives in his building, who we meet once. Yeah, we meet once,
and she has a daughter.
Yeah.
And they just, like, meet in the elevator, and they just have this, what you think is, like, a cute little meet cute, where, like, she does, like, the gun symbol to your head, where you're like, oh, just kill me now, like, in a very sarcastic, obviously not literally meant way, and he kind of, from that moment, he, like, you think that he has a crush on her, and, like, that, oh, this is gonna be a thing. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, and then we see this whole relationship play out through most of the movie, where they go on dates, and she goes and watches him in the comedy club, and he after he does his first murder, he goes to her apartment in a fit, and grabs her and kisses her, and it's implied that they do more.
Maybe I don't.
It's implied.
Well, it's interesting because
it's heavily
I thought
implied.
that even in his I guess delusions or hallucinations or whatever, he never really does anything that you'd think would be charming or attractive to her. So it's not even like his fantasies are he's not even like imagining himself as a more socially
it's like him, but it's her accepting him at like his level, like wherever he is, like it's just him, it's just her accepting that, and her being completely okay and on board, and patient through all of that. She's like the one person who I think in his fantasy, she's the one person who like really just truly accepts him, right? She doesn't try to change him. She doesn't think his comedy's not funny. She thinks he's very funny, and like she thinks, I don't know, that he's just this vulnerable guy who she just wants to take care of. But so like they go through this whole thing. He kisses her. He even imagines her in the hospital with him.
Yeah.
When his mother's in the hospital. It's weird, and he even believes this fantasy. He completely believes this fantasy, and it's very much supposed to like echo back to or harken back to what his mother supposedly experienced with Thomas Wayne, where his mother envisioned this whole relationship with Thomas Wayne and having a child with Thomas, because so he Arthur imagines this whole relationship, and then after he kills his mother, he goes to be with this woman who he believes he's in a relationship with. He goes to be with her. He goes to her apartment, opens her door. Why on earth was her door unlocked?
Right, yeah.
Is like my biggest question. But he just opens the door, goes in. He's just like sitting on the couch, in a very clearly like deranged state.
Did you think that he was going to kill her? Because I wasn't sure.
I was not sure. Yeah. I did not know what was going to happen.
This movie's so good at like you don't know what he's going to do next.
Yeah, I had no idea what was going to happen. All I knew was something not good was going to happen, because it was very clear when she came out. She had no idea who this he was a stranger in her apartment. And she very quickly realized who he was because like she had seen him around. And it became very clear that she didn't think of him as like an adult. She definitely thought of him as like someone with a mental disorder who needed to be taken care of, like almost as like a childlike mind.
Because she was like, "What is your mother home?
Is your mother home? Yeah. Can I call her? Like, can I call someone?" Yeah. And that was like that moment that triggered him into remembering, or into realizing like, oh, I'm not in a relationship with this woman. Right, and it did the thing where it like cut between what he was imagining and then like it's just him sitting alone the whole time. Yeah. In all of these scenes that we saw. Yeah. I thought it was really well edited. It was really well done. Yeah, really well done. But it was this moment where, you know, when she mentioned his mother, right? And she's like, "Can I call your mother? Is your mother home?" When he realized like, if I had actually been in a relationship with you, you would know that my mother wasn't home. Yeah, and it was kind of like this moment of realization for him. And he lost it. Yeah. But he doesn't kill her. He doesn't kill her. That we see. No. He definitely, like, it seems like he's going to. And then for whatever reason, he just doesn't. I think probably because he sees like that he almost victimized her, like it's not her fault that he had this fantasy about her, you know. And I think he realizes that, and that's why he didn't kill her. Yeah. So this movie, like we mentioned, has inspired a lot of controversy from people who, well, like before it came out, from people who hadn't seen it yet.
and I don't know. Yeah, like I think there's been several waves of it, both before and after, and from people who have seen it and who haven't seen it. What's going on? What? We live in a society.
So, I
haven't read very much about it.
Right.
Like
so I've read one article.
Okay.
So far, because once again, I didn't want to like really have like a bunch of prejudgments coming into this, but I read one article, and it was basically about a bunch of people who like bought tickets because they were really excited to go see it, and they bought tickets, and once they got into the theater, they very quickly realized that the movie was either like not what they thought the movie was going to be, or they thought it was just way too dark for them to be able to handle, and so they left. Most of them said, from what I gathered, most people left around the first murder, right? The first murder happened, and that was like, oh no, gotta go. But
what were they expecting though?
That's the weird thing, right? I don't know entirely what they were expecting. There were some people who said like, you know, maybe they didn't understand what an origin story for the Joker would be like. Yeah. But that like this was not what they thought it was going to be, which I mean, I don't know what more you could expect for an origin story of a dark character like the Joker. I'm not really, no matter what you do, it has to be kind of dark and tormented, you know? It was really interesting to me was what I was reading. The people who were leaving the theaters weren't necessarily people who suffered from mental illness themselves. In fact, most of the people that I've spoken to, including myself, we have mental illness, and we were like we related to the movie a lot, and we found almost like catharsis through it, where like we were like, yes, this is our experience of the mental health system, this is our experience of this, like this is how we feel, absolutely. And that was like pretty much across the board with like me and like all my friends who have mental disorders and mental illness. This is very much, and even some of my friends who have physical ailments but can't really get treatment for it for whatever reason. This is very much like how we feel, you know, we feel like victims of the system. Like no one, Arthur in the movie says it perfectly when he's talking to his therapist early on. He's talking about what's wrong with him, and he's talking about his problems, and she interrupts him, and he basically goes off on her and says like, you don't listen to me. You don't listen to anything that I say. I could say that I want to kill 5 people today, and you wouldn't do anything about it because you don't hear me. You don't listen to me. I'm asking for help, and you just do your job. I'm just another person sitting in front of you, and you don't do anything about it. Yeah. I mean, in his journal, she literally read a sentence that said, I hope my death, it makes more sense than my life. Right. Which, to me, screams cry for help. Like, screams like...
This person needs more care than they're getting.
Yeah, screams it. Like, and he even said, I felt better, like, I felt happier in the asylum than I felt out here. And to me that screams, okay, he's okay with going back to the asylum. Send him back to the asylum. Help him. Do something. And I felt like everyone I've talked to about the movie before and after, like, they've all had a similar experience where it was more of like a cathartic, like they could relate to it really well if they were someone who had mental illness. But a lot of the people I was reading about who were leaving the theaters in the middle of the movie were people who didn't have mental illness, but they had like a relative who had mental illness. And I think it was almost, from what I read, I think it was almost like they didn't like seeing their friend almost like portrayed in that light. Yeah. In that darkness. And but I think that's because a lot of people can't handle the truth about mental illness and about that dark place that your friend is in, or the dark place that your sister is in. Like, a lot of people, you know, they hear that their friend has depression and they're like, oh, you're just a sad person. Or they hear that your friend has bipolar disorder and they're just like, oh, you're sick, you'll get help, you'll be fine. They don't realize just how dark of a place you're in when you have a mental illness, even if you're getting help. Even if you have, like, the best care ever, depression is still hard, and, like, mental illness is still very difficult to work through. And even if you're...
And it's a real concrete thing that's distinct from just being sad.
Yeah.
Or being upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a hard truth for a lot of people to grasp. And I think it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch a villain that everyone knows is a villain be portrayed the same way that your best friend could be portrayed, or that your sister could be portrayed, or your brother, or whatever. I think it's hard to see, you know, that the Joker's like everyone else, but he just didn't get the help that he needed. And so I think that's a lot of the reason why a lot of people are leaving, is because it's hard to see what could happen to your friend if they're not helped.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So that side of the controversy is like, oh, we have these loved ones who might have a mental illness and we don't want them to be identified with a villain. So at least what I heard in the weeks before the movie came out, the sort of controversy was that this movie and this character would provide a sympathetic like icon identifier with a certain kind of person who might be feel the same that he does about society and about the hardships in their life, and would be inclined to be violent. I don't know.
I can see that. Yeah, I can definitely see how someone could take that. Because I mean it is. But
and we see that in the movie. We see definitely. People who react to a murderer and want to be identified with him and use him as an icon.
I mean, for example, the guy who ends up killing the Waynes at the end of the movie, it's not the Joker, right? You think it's going to be the Joker, but it's not. It's one of these protesters who sees the Waynes go into this dark alley, and taking note of what Arthur has done, he does the same. He kills the Waynes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and these aren't unfounded, because like even I forget if it was The Dark Knight or Suicide Squad, but obviously there's been killers dressed as clowns who have actually in the theaters killed people. I don't know. I guess there's no right or wrong answer. How careful do people have to be?
That's the thing, right? It's art.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously censorship is not a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be able to express art is a rare thing that allows us to be able to express things that we can't say otherwise, you know? And I feel like this movie will help a lot of people. It'll help them see, like, you know, the state of the mental health system, the state of the criminal justice system. And I think those who are able to sit through the movie will gain an understanding about, like, the people that they know who have mental illness. They'll be able to understand them, I think, a little bit more, and think a bit about what they go through. And then on the side of people who have mental illness, you know, they'll see someone who struggled with this, who's portrayed very well. I mean, very well. I mean, I cannot stress how well mental health is displayed in this movie. It was very, very well researched. And I definitely feel like there were people who worked on this film who dealt with these issues.
Yeah. Because
it was so well portrayed, so accurately portrayed.
If we haven't said it enough, Joaquin Phoenix is amazing in this movie. Like, like, even though, like, I've seen so many movies that he's in, but, like, I never saw Joaquin Phoenix in that. It was completely... It was just its own character.
This is his masterpiece, I think, so far.
Anyway. And, like, even just, like, it was that way when he was Arthur before, and then he... I was not sure, just because the character was so vulnerable at the beginning of the movie in a way that we haven't seen the Joker in other movies, I don't think. I wasn't sure whether I would, like, buy him as the Joker towards the end, but I thought, like... He
made the transition really very believable and...
Yeah, and subtle, and, like, by the end, it was just the Joker.
Yeah, it worked. It was really well... I mean, Joaquin... Phenomenal. Yeah. It was fantastic. He was just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Cannot stress that enough. What was I saying before that?
I forget.
Joaquin Phoenix is amazing.
Yeah, he's great. No, the other thing that I thought was interesting was people before the movie were obviously, who hadn't seen the movie, were speculating that that him being rejected by the woman would feed into what drives him over the edge. And it's similar to what happened in Taxi Driver, which was... in the first act, he meets a girl, and they're actually getting along great. And the character, the Travis Bickle character, he's kind of rough around the edges, but in a kind of charming way. But then one day he takes her to basically like a dirty movie theater, and she gets really offended, and then leaves him and never talks to him again. So, and that's sort of the inciting incident that drives him into becoming a terrorist. And it's understandable to be concerned about what kind of message that could send. But that's not at all what happens in this movie. It's not that she never rejects him. She's just never...
They never have a relationship.
The imagined relationship that he has just simply doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I think she's never portrayed as cruel at all.
No. In fact, I think opposite. She's always portrayed as this very kind, caring person, who simply just, like, doesn't have a connection with him, really, at all, other than the one time in the elevator. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. I don't know, any last thoughts on Joker? I can read some of the... Yeah, it's interesting how many, like, it's basically a third of everyone gave it. Here's some headlines from Rotten Tomatoes. A movie of a cynicism so vast and pervasive as to render the viewing experience even emptier than its slapdash aesthetic does. It's a negative review. Let's see. Joker is a bad movie, yes. It's predictable, cliched, deeply derivative of other, better movies, and overwritten to the point of self-parody. It's very interesting, because, like,
I don't see that at all. I thought it was very original.
I can see how... And, like, I've just seen these movies recently that I'm talking about, so I guess I can see how someone who's older than us, who's lived through more of film history, can feel that it's very derivative.
But, I mean... Every movie borrows from other movies.
Sure.
I mean, there's literally... every thought borrows from other thought. Like, there is not an original thought in this world that has not been thought before.
Not nearly as compelling as the weeks of controversy leading up to its release would indicate. It's both completely ridiculous and ill-conceived.
See, I don't understand that. Like, that's not my experience of this movie at all.
No. Yeah, I guess I can see how if you've visited this kind of world many times in movies like Scorsese's and others, it can feel derivative. But I think that, well, like we were talking about, I think it has great cathartic power for people who have experienced similar cruelty. Yeah. So I don't know. I might not have time to go into the other topics. We want to also talk about, in the theme of sort of toxic parenting and generational trauma, talk about some other movies that we've seen this Well, I guess we're in fall now. But we want to talk about Ready or Not and Ad Astra. I guess we could do that next week, maybe.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. Yeah. So, yeah, let's look forward to that. I don't know. I don't even know where you'll be listening to this. I'll probably put it on YouTube and other places that people put podcasts. Maybe Spotify. I don't know. I don't know how to do this. We'll get better at it.
It's an experiment.
You can follow me at Hank Meldrum on Instagram, where I'll be posting Inktober once a week, maybe. I don't know. I'm very behind. Do you want to plug anything, Jordyn?
No.
No?
I'm good.
Follow you at Theater Princess.
How do you know my Instagram handle?
Yes, I follow you.
Okay, yeah, I guess follow me on Theater Princess, and you will see lots of inactivity.
Yeah, nothing.
You will see lots and lots of nothing. You might see my Halloween costume. You'll probably see my Halloween costume pop up.
Oh, that'd be cool, yeah.
Yeah. So, #Dark Crystal. Deep.
Nice. Yeah, I'm not... I'll be doing... Yeah, keep your eye open for more podcasts and maybe some film stuff and drawings, and I post pictures of my food.
He's a very good cook.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, okay. Thanks for listening, whoever's listening, and maybe this will evolve into something more put together next time. Okay. Bye.
Bye.